So hey there fellow YouTubers, it's Frank Bush here again. So in today's video I'm going to show you some of the latest builds I've done and how I kind of connect all these different small scale systems together so that they work as kind of one unit. So if you've watched previous videos of mine, you might recognize like the USB charger and that kind of thing. And these smaller units are just store-bought commercially available units for USB that I've shown in lots of videos in the past. But this animal over here, this is a new build out that I've done. I really wanted to do a video on this, and I went and recorded all the different scenes in that, but I found about a third of my video files themselves ended up getting corrupted with the SD card. There was some issue going on there, so unfortunately I didn't manage to do a full detail on that build. But like I say, in this video today I want to show joining these different systems together to show you how truly handy it can be and how versatile it can be when you're out in the field. So I'll just kind of walk through some of the details of this build out. I'll try to keep my shadow out of things as much as I can, but in essence, if you've watched previous videos of mine, you've seen where I use this module here that allows me to have 12-volt cigarette lighter adapter. It has a couple USBs out on there. There's a voltmeter, and then for here I've attached AC power. As you can see, it's like 110 volt that plugs into the wall, so you can plug in up to about 150 watts on this unit, and that sits on an independent power switch where I can kick it on and off here, and then the DC powered stuff is all sitting over here. So that's the, you know, simply the core functioning of this unit. Is to give me AC wall power, USB, cigarette lighter, you know, the basic, you know, stuff that you kind of get. Now when it comes to being able to plug this unit in, I've set it up where I've got MC4 adapters that can feed in solar panels directly, and I'll hook those up in this video. And then I also have it where I can plug in wall power, so I can charge this thing, you know, via solar or the wall. But like I say, I won't go into great detail about all the internals of this, just because, like I said, I was going to do a video on that and the files and everything else, but such is life. But what I'm going to do is I'll keep out this MC4 connection here, and we'll hook it up to the solar panels as the next step. Yep. So like I say, as the next step, I'll just plug in these solar panels to give them a bit of charge. I normally just keep them face down when they're not plugged in and being used, but I'll just toss that there for now. And as you can see, it's really elementary. The male plugs into the female again. Now this thing's hooked up and it's taking a charge into the batteries. Yeah, it's just that simple. And I'll just position that to sit in the sun a bit better. And so needless to say, that'll just start taking a charge now into the main battery. And now I'll just grab some wires and hook these other units in together so they all kind of work as one animal. Yeah. Okay, so now when hooking these all into each other, it's really elementary. So I've just got a USB cable here where I've got my little meter so I can show you guys some stuff when it comes to the amount of power being consumed and those types of things. But needless to say, it's going to be as simple as turning this on, plugging into the USB here, and now this battery stack that I built out in previous videos, I'm going to turn around and I don't know if the camera's going to catch that. All right, let's see. Oh yeah, we're doing fine. So needless to say, this USB cable will just plug in. I've got a USB in right here that's a USB-C connection, and then those are my outputs for the USB. Yeah, so needless to say, I'll just turn around and plug this in. Now these units are interconnected already, right? So now this solar panel's feeding into the larger more kind of universal solar generator, and now that's supplying power. Right now it's supplying 5 volts at 0.6 amps. Now this battery is already relatively full, so it's not taking the full draw, but it'll take up to 2.4 amps, you know, at maximum if this battery was really low. Yeah, so I'll just kind of shift these back a little bit, buy some real estate, make sure I'm still in camera here. Yeah, we're still doing okay. I'll maybe lift this a little bit. There we go. So needless to say, we're in a situation where as this battery charges, it takes a charge off the solar panels faster than is being supplied out to here. This is only taking 10 to 15 watts worth of energy, whereas this can absorb up to 50. Normally it's closer to about 30, 35, but it'll take up to 50. So needless to say, I'm not overly concerned when it comes to the flow energy coming in. And the reason why I'm kind of talking about all this is the battery that's in here is only 256 watts worth of energy. And even though this is a smaller unit, this USB battery bank that I've built, it actually holds 320 watts worth of power. So it has a larger capacity within it, even though it's a smaller size. I went with the larger case so I could go out to the AC power and that type of stuff in this generator. But the joy of working in this USB stuff, even though it doesn't seem like it's it's not that powerful, it doesn't cook food and that kind of stuff, as I've shown in previous videos, you can create fires and you can desalinate water and other things using just USB level power, 5-volt level power. But what I'm going to do now is I've got 2 more cables, and I'm going to turn around and plug these in, and I'm going to plug them into this USB battery bank that I've shown the build out in the past. And now when it comes to the charging inputs on these little commercially available units, they take a USB-C. So I'm just using a USB-C connection, and now hopefully the camera's picking that up. I know those little orange lights don't necessarily glow the best on the camera, but needless to say, this is now taking a charge, and I can plug in the other one now and have it where this is taking a charge. And hopefully the light will get caught on that one. Like I say, it's a bright day. So what this ends up creating now for me, this little setup, is I now have a lot of USB outs, and I also have the ability to cook food. So I can plug in 12-volt cigarette lighter device here to cook a meal off in a 12-volt cooking utensil, if you will. And then I still have 2 outputs here off the USB that are both rapid charge. I can plug in cell phones or tablets and that type of stuff, and they'll do the fast charging. I've talked about that in detail in the previous video. And now these devices, they'll put out rapid charging as well, but they only go up to a maximum of 5 volts at 3 amps off each one of these outputs. So now what this allows for me, though, just this small of a setup, is to be able to cook food and run lights and power my hypochlorous acid generators to purify the water, and run my USB, I showed in the previous video, my little USB heating element to create fires and those types of things. I can run all of that stuff off of this small of a setup, all at one time. So needless to say, I'll go and grab a couple things and plug them in and start to kind of show you the level of load that I can put on this, yeah? So I guess one small detail I should show here as well is, try to peel that back, as you guys can see that the main solar generator, the largest physically of the 3, is throwing 5.09 volts at 0.97 amps. It increased the amps a bit because it's now taking draw off those batteries, yeah? But needless to say, this will bounce around between half an amp and 2 amps depending on the state of the batteries, generally speaking. If they're in good state, it'll slow down, and if they're not, it'll just take more. But it'll pull anywhere from, say, 5 watts up to a little more than 10, yeah? Okay, so now I've got this 12-volt pot here. This is more like a frying pan. I've shown previous versions of the Road Pro technology. I really like using it, but this is more like a frying pan rather than a sauce pot, if you will. So needless to say, I'm just going to end up plugging in my 12-volt plug into there. If you hear a bit of noise in the background, the neighbor's doing construction. It's the weekend, that kind of thing. And I'll show you 2 seconds that this light is on. I don't know if the camera will pick it up from there, but the light is on here. It's a little green light showing me the power is flowing. And needless to say, this pan is starting to warm up. So I'm simply just going to pop open a can of vegetable soup here. Just use this as the example. Little home cooking, just like Mom used to buy, right? Fresh out of the can. So I'll have to get some water to add to this. So I'll have to stop for a second. and just keep the lid on and keep any bugs out. So, but needless to say, it's that simple, right? Let me just go grab some water and kind of top that up a bit though. All right, like I say, just got to top that up with a bit of water, and I'm not going to be shy about it, just to kind of make things go faster, you know, on the video, and no shortcuts or any of that business. But I don't want it to be too watery either, right? So needless to say, I'll let this thing go off and do its business. Normally this takes about half an hour to get to the point where it's at a simmer, you know, and it's kind of ready to be consumed. 20 minutes sometimes. It all depends really on what it is you're cooking, you know. Some stuff is thicker than others, right? But I'll let that go now. So, and as you can see, that's running straight off of the 12 volt here. Let me shift the angles, and then hopefully the camera's picking up the green glow there, and that little LED just lets me know that the 12 volt is flowing properly. Yeah, so needless to say, it's really that simple for me to kind of get food going, you know, at least one pod cooking. If I use my larger device, I can hook on more than one 12 volt, and I can run multiple pots at the same time, but I'll save that for another video. Now the thinking really though is I'll kick over here now and bring out some of the other devices I have that are all USB based, that I can use to run my lighting, and like I say, to make water safe to drink, and to create fires and those types of things, to show you the full level of capacity that I can have running this system. Yeah, okay, so I just kind of had to go and grab a couple things and organize stuff to get it ready. But the thinking really is, I've shown in the previous videos now of how to make fire and how to purify water using my fire making tool. I'll just put that there for now, and my hypochlorous acid generator. Now this takes a few minutes, so I'll just get this going. What I've done is I've already gotten a bowl of salt water together there. I'm just going to set this to the side, and when it comes to the hypochlorous acid generator, in essence it runs electricity through the salt water, turns it into hypochlorous acid, and makes it that it can purify water. So needless to say, I'll kind of take this, and it's another USB device. I'm going to take this and just drop it in that water. In fact, I'll move this stuff forward a bit, and I'm just going to plug that in, and it should start to bubble off now as it's kind of doing its business. So I'll shift camera angles and show you that up close. But in essence, the liquid that comes off this, you add, you know, say a teaspoon's amount to a liter of water, and it's going to purify that water. You know, that's even being strong. That would be strong disinfectant for this level. But you know, small amounts of this stuff can purify large volumes of water. That's the heart of it, right? So like I say, I'll shift the camera angles and show you up close of it working and doing its business. So hopefully you guys are able to see that on camera. It'll just bubble away, and it's turning that salt water into hypochlorous acid. If you're kind of curious to this technology, I've done full videos on this in the past, and I think it was called something along the lines of using salt water to make fresh water safe to drink, something along that lines. But needless to say, this takes about 15 minutes to run, and it'll turn all that salt water into hypochlorous acid, and I'll be able to, with this volume of water that's in this one bowl, I'd be able to do off gallons and gallons and gallons of water to make it safe to drink. Yeah, so I'll shift back now and switch to a different camera angle. So in the previous video, or you know, one or two ago, I showed these kind of USB lighting systems with on-off switches and that kind of stuff. I showed this, I don't know, 2 or 3 videos ago, but needless to say, it's got about a 20-25 foot length of cable that can run these lights, if you will. So it allows me to kind of set lights up in a fairly broad area when it comes to the, you know, zone that I can cover. But I'm going to plug in a pile of these now just to show you guys the, you know, amount of lighting that I could run all at one time. So it's simply as, you know, I plug it in. Hopefully the camera's picking that up. No, and my lights are running, yeah, and I can turn those on and off easy enough. So I've got a pile of these that I've just got sitting in a bag beside me. I'm going to turn around and plug these in and just get a bunch of them running all at one time to show you of, you know, when it comes to running lots of different stuff at one time, it's not a problem. There's 3. What I'll do, because this will take a few minutes, I'll go and plug them all in, and then I'll come back, yeah? Okay, to give you a small taste of kind of how far I can go with things, I've got 8 of these 3-watt light bulbs plugged in now, and like I say, could easily run extension cords in all directions, 20-25 foot. I use a single one of these. If you've watched previous videos of mine, I can use a single one of these in the back of my truck to create lighting for me that's comfortable. So it gives you an idea of kind of the scope of which I can take the lighting. And I've got multiple other lights that I can plug into my bag, plug in from my bag here. So I'll hook those up and I'll show you that these lights are so efficient. Even if I'm running off of single USB, I can plug 4 lights into here and have independent on-off switches on this unit for each one of these. And I could plug this up into the second USB output coming off the main solar generator, or I can plug it in over here. I've still got one free socket there, but it gives you an idea. If I can step it up to having just up to like a dozen lights running, this is the same time as I'm cooking off this meal still. I'll pop this open. Yeah, we're starting to get a bit of steam off that. I'll just leave it for a minute. And this USB hypochlorous acid generator is still running in the background, right? But let me see if I can pull out 4 more USB based lights, and then I'll hook them all up and just use this as the connector instead, yeah? Or I should say in combination with all of this. All right, so as you can see, I've hooked up another 4 lights, and I've got those running off of the one USB port that was available here, and these are all independently lined, right? I can kick these on and off and turn the power, you know, on and off to them at will, if you will. This one stays on because it's got an internal battery built right into the light, but that's another topic for another day. But I'm running a dozen lights now at this point in time, and each one of them anywhere from 3 to 7 watts a piece. And let me just stir the soup, make sure the heat spreads out evenly. And like I say, this has been going for maybe about 15 minutes now, so it's already getting hot enough where I'm seeing substantial amounts of steam coming off of it. I've definitely want to let it go a little longer, but yeah, it's getting to be like a lukewarm coffee temperature. That's about the best way to describe it. It's probably sitting about 40-50 degrees Celsius at this point. And like I say, so I'm able to cook food, run this dozen set of lights, and now I've got this hypochlorous acid generator. It's still going and chugging away, making water safe for me. And off of this one last USB, I might just shift my camera angles to make sure I'm catching this all. But off this one last USB, I'll show you that I can even get a fire going using the unit I created in the last video, all while I'm running everything of this stuff all at one time. And to give you an idea of the scope of things, I can run cooking food for about 2 hours, and I can run these lights off of the setup for days. So I really prioritize having my lighting system, as you can see. You know, I could easily drop a light or two and plug in my tablets or my cell phones, those types of things. It's easy enough, right? But I just show this as the example. But yeah, let me cut angles here and show you, then we'll get a fire going off this USB at the same time, yeah? Okay, so now I've got that USB unit that I built out in, I think it was the last video I did. I end up doing so many different videos on different things, you kind of get forgetful over time, but needless to say, this little USB unit gives me the ability to cook fire, or make fire, I should say. I've got just some toilet paper I'll use, and kind of keep it a little bit away from things, but I simply just plug this into the USB. Normally give it a second to kind of warm up, and now this little unit should just get some fire going for me. Sometimes it takes a second. There we go. So as you can see, easy way to get fire happening, yeah? Hopefully the camera's picking that up, all right? Let's see. Yeah, easy enough to get the fire going, right? And I'm just going to unplug this, but you could see I was doing this all at the same time. You know, these dozen lights are still running. The hypochlorous acid generator is still working. You know, I'll kick back over and kind of shift the angles here and show you that. Oh, you know, you got the hypochlorous acid generator still flowing. all these lights are still producing, right? No problems at all. And you know, the food's still cooking away. Let's make sure the 12-volt light is still lit up. Hopefully you guys can see that. There we go. Sorry. But yeah, one way or the other, I'm able to run all of this stuff off of, you know, a system that's small enough that, you know, a couple trips and I can carry this in. I can carry each one of these in one hand each, you know, separate from bringing in the solar panel. This stuff is all kind of easily backpackable into an environment, if you will. But as you can see, it gives me the ability to purify water, create fire, get lights going, cook food. You know, it's not 100%, you know, the solution when it comes to kind of backcountry stuff, but it's definitely a step in that direction. And the main reason why I say that is only because I don't have enough depth of charge in this battery to be able to run it for days itself. You know, this really is reliant on the solar panels taking in good sun on a regular basis. If I switched up to, well, I've modified it, but in the previous video, one of my previous videos, I showed, you know, using a battery box. I've actually disassembled that and used the components to build this out, and I took some of the other components off that box and turned it into my crate. So I've done some modifications, needless to say, so that battery box doesn't exist anymore. I've switched up to having double batteries instead of single, but it still has all the functionality and that kind of stuff, yeah. But if I use that, then it becomes kind of a complete off-grid system where I can cook for hours and hours and hours without having to worry about recharging, and I can run all my devices for days and days. To give you an idea, each one of these batteries, you know, these little commercially available ones, they should be able to run this set of lights that I have here. They should be able to run that for, you know, from full to dead for close to about 10 hours before they're going to run out of power. You know, it's not an issue in that regard of they hold a half decent amount of capacitance in them, and there's about 75 watts or so, to give you an idea. But in this battery that they're getting their power from, there's 320 watts in that. So, you know, even if these went, you know, full to dead and you had to charge them back up again and that kind of thing, you know, I can charge both of these off of this from a single charge, you know, roughly about 4 times, you know, within reason. And to give you an idea how long I can run the full set of lighting, and not to mention that this battery here, I could switch over and start running lights off that, and just I think a single one of these light bulbs ran off of a single charge of this unit from full to dead. It took 5 days and 23 hours, if I remember correctly. And like I say, the hypochlorous acid generator, really, this little product now, well, it's been running within reason, it's been running long enough, at least for the example anyways, of, you know, I've got one small bowl of water here, but to give you an idea, I could pour that into over 50 gallons of water. That's kind of questionable, and the hypochlorous acid that's in it, it has a real strong pool smell, but the hypochlorous acid that's now in this liquid would be enough to purify those 50 gallons with ease. So needless to say, I'll just kind of set that aside because it's pretty well there, and really just kind of unwind things as we go, right? And I mentioned earlier that this light bulb stayed on because it has an internal battery built into it. This is one of the older ones I've had. I've had this for quite a few years now, but I can, you know, it's got a kill switch on it there. But I like these kinds of systems where they're flowing down. It's not the most efficient when it comes to, you know, electrical people be like, oh, there's efficiency losses and everything else. But when it comes to functionality out in the field, this kind of stuff gives you a whole level of comfort above just roughing it in the bush. You know, to be able to run full lighting systems that, you know, I've got a dozen lights running, and potentially, you know, I pack all this stuff in a single bag, right? I've still got more stuff in here that I'm not even showing of, you know, potentially if I had other solar battery banks that I was using, or, you know, the different ones I've shown in different videos, I could plug those in and have them charging throughout the day too, so I have, you know, independent lighting and stuff at night times. This system's really, really flexible in that regard. And like I say, I'm running this whole thing off of this 50-watt solar panel. This realistically would give me power to be able to kind of cook off at least one meal a day normally, and be able to run my lights fully, you know, without issue. Like I say, let's kind of switch over and see how the food's doing, because it looks like it's bubbling away in here, and kind of shift the camera angles down a bit and move in, see where we're at with this. As you can see, I'm up to the point of a simmer now. So, you know, if you were cooking food that wasn't out of a can or that kind of stuff, you'd want it to go for a little bit longer just to make sure that, you know, it didn't make you sick or any of that business. But able to get to the point of a boil, if you will, is a critical thing when you're out in the backcountry, right? You know, like I say, fire ban or not, nobody's ever going to know you're kind of running this type of setup. It's really covert, you know, and really efficient. And but to give you an idea of the level you can use all this technology, almost all of it is lithium iron phosphate batteries. I'd be able to use this stuff for well over a decade, you know. And like I say, most of this stuff is portable, you know, with the ease that you know, when it comes to this unit here, let me just unplug this, and to show you kind of how light things are, let me pivot that up a bit. Well, with my left hand, I'm picking that up with one hand easily. You know, it wasn't even a strain on my arm, if you will, right? So this whole setup doesn't weigh a massive amount, you know. And when it comes to kind of why I built out this generator, I had the marine battery box that I'd done the build out in the previous video, but I found the weight of that was just a little much if I wanted to kind of tote it around and bring it out into the backcountry. So I decided to shift gears and make it that the stuff in the truck got the larger battery, and then I took the smaller battery I had shown in previous videos. It's 20 ampere hour battery, and it's on the inside of this unit, and it makes it that this is more portable and stuff now. And it gives me the ability where, yeah, I can run USB lighting, and I can cook food, and I can run, you know, AC power, like, you know, shavers or small lights, you know, that kind of stuff. I can run all of that off these units, you know. And online, you know, I see comparable units to the amount of power this puts out, and they turn around and want twice the price for what it cost me to build this unit. And, you know, that some of the stuff they do, I don't necessarily agree with. I'm just going to put the lid back on this to kind of keep it flowing, but one way or the other, it's at a simmer and it's doing its thing. So I'm just going to unplug the power and just keep it warm, because I'll eat it here in a minute. But needless to say, when it comes to the inverters and stuff that they put into these units, you know, they'll make all these rating claims to people that don't really know. They'll sit back and say, oh, we've got an 800 watt or 1000 watt inverter built into it. And it's like, well, if the battery can only hold 250 watt, you know, 256 watts or something, like this unit can, it's fine and dandy. You can have a 1000 watt battery in there, but inverter in there, but if it's only going to work for 15 minutes, you know, what's the gain of it? Yeah, okay, you're going to be able to run larger devices, but what, for a 5-minute period you're able to run that more powerful device? To me, it's kind of a bit of false marketing, a bit of false advertising in that regard. Whereas with this AC power, you know, I scaled the inverter to be proportionate to the size of the battery. For one, to not be super hard on the batteries, and for two, to make it that I actually have a half decent length of time of usable power that comes out of these things. You know, I can only produce 150 watts out the AC, but I can run that for almost 2 hours, you know, off of this. I wouldn't normally run this at max off, you know, for 2 hours. It's not practical. I prefer using 12 volt when I'm out in the backcountry and USB, but it just gives you an example of, you know, if I wanted to run something off this AC, I want to be able to run it for a few hours, not 10-15 minutes, right? So, you know, if you're looking at buying these types of units, you know, you can get cheaper ones that are available that are lithium ion batteries, but normally those are only going to last 3 to 5 years. You know, with the lithium iron phosphate batteries that I put in here, it's going to last way longer. It's going to give you way more cycles, way more usable. It's just better all around from my lens for longevity and durability and safety and all that stuff. But I just wanted to kind of touch on that, you know, point about the AC, because to me it just seems foolish that, you know, oh, let's put a 2000 watt inverter on a 100 watt battery and watch it last for 15 seconds before it wants to run out of power. You know, just silly stuff, right? But either way, I know I get wordy in these videos. Hopefully you enjoyed what I've showed you here and how I can interconnect these different systems. And, you know, when it comes to all of this stuff, it would be definitely feasible for me to be able to, you know, pack all this stuff up and tote it into a remote location with ease. I'll just kind of see if that's a bit better, you know, that I could easily tote all this stuff into a remote location, you know, without it being physically excruciating to do. You know, I know it looks like a bunch of stuff, but, you know, these lights they weigh nothing, right? They're just voluminous. So to turn around and, you know, pack all of these in, yeah, you need to make sure that you're kind of got big bags that you can carry all your gear in and that kind of stuff. I'll straighten this all out afterwards, but the actual weight of it is nothing really. And I like having lots of lights. Not that I'm going to run a dozen lights at a time, because to me, you know, obviously I did this example to the point of absurdity, but I just wanted to show kind of the capacity in which I can run, you know, larger scale, you know, power output, and still not have problems with it. Now, generally speaking, I'm only running 1 or 2, maybe up to 4 of these lights, and I keep a lot of the redundant ones in my bag for, you know, if a light bulb burns out, right? But as you can see, that's another single hand carry. It's not heavy, right? There's not a lot to it. And so I'll just kind of set that aside. And when it comes to the being able to make the fire and being able to make the hypochlorous acid and stuff, I normally carry that with my little folding solar panels here. And I guess that's one other thing I can show you in this video before I wrap it up is I can actually just stop and I'll show you that here. Let me switch camera angles and I'll just show you the kind of one last step, yeah? So, and kind of show you the interoperability of my systems. You know, if I wanted to turn around and bring this down to be kind of a more lightweight setup and be even more portable, just relying on this stuff for lights. You know, when it comes to, I'll leave all these cables plugged in to these battery banks and stuff, but now it's easy enough for me to turn around and say, okay, I'm going to plug this directly into solar panels and have that feed into my USB-C connection here. And now this panel is giving a charge to this, the equivalent of what it would have off the solar generator. And I can leave that charging absolutely independently. And now these 2 battery banks, if I want to fill them up independently, I can plug those in to the solar panel directly as well, because the solar panel can handle up to 3 USB imports simultaneously. So at this point in time, all of these devices are taking a charge all at the same time. I don't know if the camera's going to get that okay. It's so bright I can barely even see the lights themselves, but I can see that the orange lights are showing that these are taking a charge. And I'll just pan over to here and kind of zoom in and show you here. So I know it's not the most elegant, but hopefully you're picking it up on the camera where little blue lights glowing on the solar panel there lets me know these USB devices here are taking a charge. And this is other rapid charge that comes off, and that's the one that's plugged right into this main USB battery bank. And as you can see, even with the load and stuff that we put on it in the video and stuff, it's still sitting at, you know, 13.3.5. So, you know, it's still got a good ample charge to it, and we were running just a ton of stuff there. But kind of step that back, but as you can see, I can break off with just these components. You know, I don't even have to take all 3 of them. I could run with just a single one of these and the solar panel, or scale it up, you know, to where I'm running off of this. It really just gives me a bunch of flexibility, right, when it comes to kind of working things. And this is all happening at the same point in time as that main solar generator I have sitting over there is still taking a charge simultaneously off this solar panel, you know. So it's really good in that regard. Of obviously I'd want to kind of shift that into the light more just so it's catching the light, but you can see now both of these systems can run completely independent of each other, or they can run, you know, really I can run them as 4 independent systems. I can have the solar generator, this USB generator, and these all running as their own animals, right? They can be set up in different locations around your camp, running lights and other things. And this small solar panel setup that I have here, really, that's enough to kind of keep all of this stuff afloat for weeks, if not months and years at a go. The only thing that I end up worrying about with this specific setup is that because I can only cook for about 2 hours off of this small of a battery bank, if I want, like I said earlier in the video, if I wanted to go for really long extended periods, I'd want to switch this up and switch up this 50-watt solar panel. And instead of running, you know, a 256-watt battery and a 50-watt solar panel, I'd switch up to my crate builds, which have 2.5 kilowatts in them, and I'd have a 200-watt solar panel attached to it, and I'd be good to go. So like I say, I'll kind of wrap it up at this point in time, but all right, well, just kind of move things around to kind of keep everything within a single frame. Like I say, hopefully you got something out of this video. I really wanted to show in this video of the interoperability that exists between my different units and their ability to kind of work as one, you know, larger unit, or their ability to break off and work as independent components. You know, like I said, when it comes to the long term, I'd want to switch up to a larger kilowatt battery that was running this, still give me the ability to run out a couple 12 volts. Even the USB is only, you know, enough needed to come off this to kind of power other things if things, you know, aren't that sunny and that type of stuff. But yeah, I know I ramble in these videos, but if you enjoy this type of content, please like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching. Yeah, cheers.